So, hello everybody. I am excited because I am about to have a great conversation with Lynn Cox. And Lynn Cox is the minister at the Washington Ethical Society. A couple weeks ago, I was actually a guest artist in their virtual experience. And so it was my first time meeting them and, everyone from the Washington Ethical Society. And I got the opportunity to meet Lynn, and let's just say that I was telling her right afterwards that I had a new favorite person because when she explained her perspective on improvisation through her talk and how improvisation applies to music, how she sees it, and how it applies to life. Yeah, she pretty much knocked my socks off. It was pretty amazing. And so I talked to her afterwards and I said, I'd be really interested in having a conversation with you for my podcast, in order to just, chop it up some more. Yeah, she pretty much knocked my socks off. It was pretty amazing. About And so I talked to her afterwards and I said, I'd be really interested in. I told her that, I thought it'd be fun for us to have a conversation, about improvisation. And so she agreed. And here she is.
Hey there. Sorry I'm late.
Oh, you are completely fine. You are completely fine. So I was actually when I sent you the link, I was going on and just starting to give some context as far as this conversation and just how excited I am about this,
Oh.
how it came to pass.
hmm hmm
So yeah, how are you today?
Um,
I know that's
I'm
a
okay. I'm okay. The day is zooming by fast, but it's good to be here.
yeah.
Yeah.
It's kind
Uh,
of funny because at this point, uh, even how are you doing today is like a loaded question because of, everything going
yeah.
on.
Yeah, it's hard to know like how much information are we talking about?
Right.
But it's good to be with you
Yeah.
um and all that. So,
Yeah, for sure. Well, I definitely thank you for, you know, uh, having a few minutes. I was really excited to talk to you because it was really nice to meet you. I really had a lot of fun in the virtual experience,
oh
a few
good.
weeks ago. Oh, it was a great time. It was really, really a great time. And I felt right at home,
hmm
and the main reason why I was what really leads to this conversation was, you know, to be well. First of all, and I give thanks to Leah, for her even connecting me with you all. But the timing, because improvisation is, what I'm dealing with every day of my life, not just in
Yes.
but in life in general, And so to be able to be a part of, your experience, around improvisation that Sunday was really, really fun. And I felt right at home. And so as soon as you begin to speak and share your thoughts on improvisation, I was like, oh yeah, see, we would have a beer at a bar and just go in, talk forever. I was just, I could really appreciate your perspective. And there were a number of things that you said that echoed my own thoughts. So I was just like, oh, we are sisters. You know how some people say, I don't know if you've ever heard this saying, when two guys see each other, one guy might say, "Hey, you're my brother from another mother." So when it's a woman, I say, "You're my sister from another mister."
Right. Yep.
And so that's what I could tell by listening to your perspective. And so I just first of all just wanted to tell you again just how much I appreciate it. That, and I appreciated just just hearing you speak and just hearing your thoughts. And most of all, I appreciated your personality. You have
Oh,
you
thank
have a
you. And I'm so glad that you came to be with Wes because people really resonated with your music. And I know for some people they had maybe not been on the Zoom for a while because over the summer and but for this one, a lot of people gave it another try.
mm,
And your music just helped them like be there,
mm,
in a way that I think is sometimes hard in online meetings,
Right.
right? Where they could really find themselves being fully present because your music led them in there.
Right. Well, it's funny you said that. Thank you. Thank you for that because it really means a lot. And it's funny you said that because I was just talking to my daughter the other day about my journey, and I was telling her that one of the most interesting aspects of this time is that I've been doing virtual experiences and connecting, through live stream and through these things for a while.
Mm-hmm.
Video, I've been making videos since 2008, and I've been interacting with people in that way. So I was telling her it's really interesting because during this time, since everything has shifted, in all communities, many people aren't used to, using the virtual experience in order to be social, in order to relate,
Mm-hmm.
in order to get their work done, in order to entertain themselves, in order to educate themselves, and so what I told her, what I'm appreciative of as far as my journey, is that I've been doing this so long that when it comes to connecting with people through this means, I mean, I know how to connect in this way. It's and so now it's a benefit because that comes into play during these times where we have these kind of experiences.
Mm-hmm.
So I'm really grateful for you saying that, and yeah, it just felt good to be able to feel like a puzzle piece and be able to transmit that and to connect with you all in that way. I also give credit to the fact that one of my passions from childhood led to a career as an audio engineer as well.
Mm-hmm.
So I also have, a few of the technical skills, as I'm looking at like my studio setup in front of me, to be able to, deliver, good quality sound and that kind of thing, and translate. So altogether, it really did feel like a good experience, and so it's good to
Good.
hear you felt that way too.
I did. I did. So it's good to be together again.
Yeah, for sure. So you really, just like I said, you became one of my favorite people
Oh,
as soon as you
thanks.
started speaking about improvisation. While you were speaking, I had another window open, and so I went on Facebook and I put up a Facebook post, and it said something like, Lynn Cox is just became one of my favorite new people. She's so crushing this talk on on improvisation. So so yeah, I know a like-minded person when I hear, one, and so that's what I heard in you. And so I just wanted to, for us to just dig into some thoughts about improvisation, and just, yeah, just to do as if we would do if we were just hanging out, and just having fun, reflecting on something that we both related to, you know. Um, so yeah, first of all, let me just ask you this, just right off the bat. You know, when was the first time the concept of improvisation came into your life where you realized it as a thing? Like,
Hmm.
yeah, can you actually remember that?
Well, so realizing it as a separate thing, right? Because I think, I remember being a kid and pretending and just making stuff up, and, my cousins and I making stuff up
Right,
off the top of our heads. But I didn't think of that as a skill or a thing. That was just playing,
right, right,
right? And I think it must be the case that I lost it and had to get it back. And maybe that's true for a lot of people where you go into this kind of concrete developmental stage
yeah,
and young teens trying to prove that they're grown up and not kids anymore,
yes,
and then you have to go back and be like, oh, actually
yes,
that is also an important part of being human,
right,
is to try new things and make things up and not have the answer every minute.
right,
Um so I mean I think that like what I described in my talk about picking up the book about country and blues harmonica for the musically hopeless. Like, I think that was kind of a doorway to say, oh, here's a thing I want to learn,
right.
but it also incorporates this other part that I had put away.
Hmm. That makes a lot of sense to me. It's funny because as I hear you speak, the first thing that comes to my mind is that we've summed up everything you said about the life experience into a very simple phrase that we use regularly, and that is the ebb and the flow.
Mhm.
You know,
Mhm.
like you have to do something in order to get from one place to the next, you know. And then at that point, then you have a moment of reflection, and then you know where you're going from there. And it's really really interesting because with what you mentioned, that was exactly my journey within my journey of music. So what I mean is
Mhm.
the way that I started off music was at an improvisation, if you will.
Mhm.
At 13, I started getting into conscious and positive hip hop.
Mhm.
And so I became a lyricist and then an artist. And then I got to some point where I wanted to try my hand at the music and that kind of thing. This whole process was all about just creating from just your own voice, your own expression, just how do you feel, you know. The only rules was that you express yourself and you know that kind of thing. So it was interesting going from that to learning music formally and
Mhm.
it's now and that's where you and I can dump into an ocean of talking forever
Right.
about like
Yes. Yes.
because it's interesting there was so much that came with that, some all of which are the yin and the yang, the ebb and the flow, the all needed no matter where I am right now to get to where I am right now.
Mhm.
And
Yes, it all comes together. Yes.
yeah, so I'll tell you this one part of my journey that immediately connects with this. So like I said, I'm making music from 13 to 17, all by ear. There's no wrongs, and I'm able to express myself. I get to 18, and I started piano lessons, and my mentor taught me theory, and I taught myself how to read music. That, in one way, opened my ear and my mind up to a whole other world. But then, also in addition to that, it it took me away from for a period of time when I went to trying to express myself again, it took me away from just the essence of what it means to just improvise and express myself, you know?
Mhm.
Um, so I had to do exactly what you said, which was I had to take the new information that I had and carry it with me, but understand how to how to keep it from being in between just myself and the purity of just improvisation. I had to work my way back to that you know that place. So I understand exactly what you mean.
Mhm.
You know in
Mhm.
the show when you say that. Um,
Yeah. And I think something about learning the theory, like it makes you just more conscious, right?
mhm.
There's you can try a new thing and not know that you're not good at it yet.
Right, right,
And theory is like, oh, somebody thinks there's a right way to do this, but
yeah,
maybe it's not really the only right way.
right,
But it kind of, might make you be afraid to make a mistake or more conscious that you have a lot to learn.
right.
But the just natural flow is also beautiful.
It really is, and the funny thing about it is that you realize in theory, when you're studying music theory, you realize that when you learn something because that's the quote unquote way to do things, all
Mhm.
you're doing is learning someone else's subjective definition of it that became accepted by the masses, right?
Mhm.
Many times for understandable reasons. I mean, you know,
Mhm.
if it's music that sounds good and makes you feel good at that time, then everybody's going to feel good about it. So that's going to become the standard. But it's like that balance or that dichotomy of knowing that yes, that is a way to do it, and but also this is here to point me in a direction of knowing, like of going inward to say what do I feel about this, how do I want to do it, what do I want to say, you know. And
Mhm.
so it's an interesting process because you know, and this is one of the reasons why I couldn't wait to even just talk with you about it, because this what we find in music is exactly parallel to what life is. I mean, it's literally what life is, right?
Mhm. Yeah. Yeah. I mean, I think it can help, like if you have a method that you're learning, because it takes a really vast area and just cuts it down to like this much at a time.
Right.
but the mistake is thinking that's all there is, right? The mistake is thinking this is the right way versus this is the little slice of it that that's my entry point.
Right. Right.
Um,
This,
yeah.
this is the means.
Hmm.
It's interesting because it's like it at first it is the end, and it's almost like it has to be the end to some degree so that we can actually drive to it, because we're going to be more uh, inclined to drive, if we but then the goal here, or the thing you realize is, or you either do or you don't, and that's when it gets really interesting, because you have people that go in different directions based on, how this stacks up to them. You either get to that point to realize that, oh, this doesn't have to be an end, and maybe this
Hmm.
wasn't even intended for an end. It was intended to give you a means in order to go forward.
Right, it's a vehicle.
Yeah, it's interesting. One of the other ways that I've talked about this with another friend of mine for years, um, was when we talked about people that were about upholding structure, and or the mindset of upholding structure versus the mindset of innovation and moving forward and being open and being,
Mm-hmm.
and we talked about it, how, like, there's two sides to that coin, and it's interesting because both are needed. What it really comes down to is it's literally the definition of evolution. It is literally just that the upholding structure and that mindset is needed in order for things to continue on and survive, and then at some point it becomes obsolete or things evolve, and then you have to evolve with it, and that's when the innovation is important. Right.
Right. And I've heard the same thing like about social justice organizing, that you have the folks that are like, okay, the system's not perfect,
Right.
but we're going to try to keep as many people alive as we can, because if the whole thing crashes, the
Mm,
most vulnerable are the people who get crushed at the bottom. And
mm,
then there are the folks who like, this whole thing is built wrong, built from the bottom up.
right.
We need to just start over,
Right.
right? And completely restructure,
Right. Right.
right? And it's hard to do both.
It really.
But there's a way in which we have to imagine what could be better. But
Yes.
at the same time, some people need food and diapers today.
Yes. So what you're essentially talking about at the end of the day is balance,
Mm-hmm.
you know? And that's the amazing part. And to me, that, even going back to this, or just rounding it out with this improvisation thing, that's the thing that I find so amazing about the process. I've learned it in life, I've learned it in music, I've learned it in relationships, all kinds of things. But I think about life in that way, which is every day when we wake up, we step out of our bed and step out of our houses with all the information that we have to date in order to make the choices to make. You know,
Mm-hmm.
you have a goal in mind, but you have no idea what the traffic is going to look like once you get out there. You have no idea what the weather is going to be. So there's that balance that you have to strike in order to be able to move through life. You have to be able to take all your information, be confident about it, and at the same time be just as equally open, and that kind of thing. It's
Mm-hmm.
it's that balance, you know.
Right?
So
You have a plan, but you have to hold it lightly.
right, right. So yeah, so with that, one of the things I wanted to see if it was possible for you to do is I loved I mean, as soon as you started talking, the other Sunday, immediately, like, you had me dialed in, and it was because the language was so familiar. Because, like I said, as you see, even from talking, it was like the language in my own head and all the conversations that I have and that kind of thing. So with that, yeah, I was, wondering if it was okay for you to share that again with me, just that first part of it,
Sure.
and yeah, it's great. Thank you.
You're welcome. So this is that I originally wrote this for Washington Ethical Society for our gathering on August 30th, and I called it Shared Improvisation.
Okay.
And at Washington Ethical Society and at other ethical culture societies, what they call their Sunday morning gathering is platform.
Okay.
And then the thing that the leader does when they talk is called the platform address. So
Okay.
just to
Got
frame that before I start, because I start right in with the lingo.
right. Makes sense.
Um, okay. When I was in sixth grade, I started taking cello lessons. I wanted to play the trumpet or the clarinet, but the music teacher took one look at my teeth and concluded that I was going to need braces imminently and suggested a string instrument instead. So I started learning how to read sheet music and watch the conductor and follow all the rules that keep the members of an orchestra on the same page. In high school, I picked up a book called Country and Blues Harmonica for the Musically Hopeless. It might have been a birthday present. A harmonica came with the book. I didn't think I was exactly musically hopeless, but even with a few years and some music theory on the side in orchestra class, there was a lot I didn't know about suspending and resolving chords or bending notes or about making split-second decisions in response to other musicians. It was like an entirely other musical language. Though I was still a little jealous of my wind instrument playing friends, I did not abandon the cello, but stuck with it in my less than perfect way through college. And I still have the cello, but I don't play it very often. I also took guitar lessons for a few years after seminary. Throughout my musical education, I learned that there are different ways to collaborate. The tools for collaboration in an orchestra are not exactly the same as those in a string quartet, which are quite different from those in a drum circle, which are different from jazz improvisation, and that's different from a folk music jam. There are some things that each kind of group has in common, yet moving from one to the other requires more adaptation than might be obvious. In most orchestras, there's a score that the conductor has with each musician starts with sheet music, even if they haven't memorized by the time the concert rolls around. And for that individual orchestra musician, passion matters, but there's not a lot of room for individual variation on, for instance, how fast you play or the creative use of dissonance. Your section sticks together, and the conductor draws out the best in the orchestra, and it's the conductor's decisions that shape the interpretation of the piece. In a drum circle, there's less certainty, yet very large groups can still make music together. There might be one recognized leader, or the person who provides the foundational beat and sets the tone might trade across the circle. Even with one recognized leader, you don't always know what's going to happen next. Someone might come in with a polyrhythm that you haven't heard before, and there's going to be a unique combination of instruments each time. Drummers have some agreements, maybe some unspoken rules about how they're going to listen to each other, and they improvise in response to what the group is already doing. Similarly, jazz musicians can improvise and produce high quality performances that way because they have traditions and agreements that help them to respond to each other creatively. They might start with a recognized song and do a variation on that theme, or they might come up with something entirely new. It's likely that different musicians in the group will each get a chance to lead, to be the soloist that other musicians support and respond to. Jazz musicians don't need to have a conductor's score, but they still have mutual expectations that help them to stay unified, to create together and come up with a beautiful, coherent sound. Do you want me to keep going?
Let me just say, oh my goodness, let me just say that this is one of the greatest speeches I've ever heard on improv, because I know what I know. This is phenomenal, and I want everyone around the world to hear this. Like it's really that phenomenal. So to answer your question, I never want you to stop talking. We will be friends forever from this point. This is the moment. But what I will say is, I did, when I was listening back to it, I did hear like where it switched over to social, to the other, and I was going to say maybe just up to that point, would be good if that.
Yeah, sure. Let me see. Yep. Okay. That's about 3 more paragraphs.
Okay.
So maybe because I started with orchestra, my go-to method with group projects is to do things according to a plan. In my non-musical life, I like it when there's the equivalent of a conductor's score. I like knowing what to expect. I like knowing each person's role and how we're going to work together. I like being able to map out how we're going to get from the beginning of the project to the end. On the other hand, shared improvisation can be really invigorating and can help develop relationships and communication skills. I'm sure the improv group at the Washington Ethical Society can tell you all about how great this is from an acting and a comedy perspective. It's really fun to build on each other's ideas, to say yes, and figuring out together as we go how we're going to resolve the drum rhythm or the jazz session or the scene is exciting. And I will admit that the improvisational way of thinking and working is not my first instinct. It's like speaking a second or third language. It takes concentration and vulnerability and a willingness to make mistakes in front of other people. And these are also some of the qualities that bring us personal growth.
Lynn, let me just,
Thank you.
and I'm really like, I'm not just saying that just to say it. Like, because of what I know about improvisation and because of what I've learned and experienced as far as life, I could not have put it better myself. Um, there's there's a lot that comes up for me, in hearing you speak about this. One of the things that comes up for me is the very last thing that you talked about with regard to vulnerability,
Mm.
right? And so vulnerability is a subject that I'm dealing with, yeah, pretty much every day of my life, and all of us are in some capacity, but I am in that like willingly vulnerable place because of something that I'm getting ready to actually share with you. And I'm going to read you something that I wrote this morning. So this was a post. I have a quote that says, "You have the power to make vulnerability fun."
Mm.
Right? And so this is. Let me share this with you here. Okay, can you see that?
Oh, look at that. Yeah.
Yeah.
I
Okay.
feel like, oh, I feel like I know where you are.
hmm
Are you in Baltimore here?
I am. Yes, I'm actually in Baltimore. Yes.
Right, but in the picture.
Oh no. So here I'm in Ellicott City,
Oh,
which is
right. Okay.
right
Right.
outside of
Okay.
Baltimore, at the B&O Railroad Station in Ellicott City.
Yep, I see it
Um,
now.
so let me ask you a question. Can you, when I do this, is it? Let me see. Okay, I actually should be fine. Which screen do you see right now? Do you see the quote or do you see my Facebook screen?
I see the quote. I see the picture of you in Ellicott City with the quote at the bottom.
Got it. Okay. Okay. So here's what I wrote, and I was gonna read this to you anyway, and
Mm.
it's amazing because listening to the very end of your talk and how you ended on vulnerability, this literally picks up and goes and puts that thought into action. In this picture, my face is totally and happily exposed and vulnerable
Mhm.
to the illuminating light of the sun,
Mhm.
embracing it directly through musical conversation, the environment, and the totality of the life experience in general,
Mhm.
being fully present in it, bearing my soul and telling my truth confidently while accepting my whole self, strengths, weaknesses, intentions, and desires, and willingly surrendering to all that comes with that cyclical continuum,
Mm.
without fear, but just a deep need to courageously express amidst a total trusting of the process, to know that no matter what, everything will be all right.
Mhm.
Knowing that the only worthwhile thing, regardless, for us to do to have the greatest quality of life is to stay focused on fully and unapologetically accepting ourselves, smiling often, continuing to show up, and most of all, realize that we have the ability not only to embrace transparency and vulnerability, but to make it fun.
Mhm.
In the end, you'll be the sun shining and giving others the permission to shine too.
Mhm.
So, Yeah.
Amen.
We connect on a lot of things, and the way that I heard you, speak about that, it just, yeah, it just, I really, really can appreciate it. Um, so I won't hold you for too much longer. I just wanted to, I guess, talk about a few final things that's in relation to what I heard you speak about in your talk. Um, the most interesting thing I think about the improvisational journey, whether it comes to life, working together in a group at a church, or playing in music, is that we're really talking about one bottom line thing here. The
Mm.
the one consistency across all the different musical experiences that you talked about in your talk and with your life was that was goals. Goals was the name of the game at the end of the day. Each one of those situations had different goals. And so the improvisational, you know, standards, as well as the theory standards, or this is how we do things. It was all conducive to whatever the goal was for that equation.
Hmm.
And so, yeah, it's really interesting thinking about it that way, because that's really what it is in life, and that's why it's important for us to always communicate, as human beings, about our goals. First of all, just communicating, period. Because when you communicate, then you understand what other people's goals are based on
Hmm.
how they're speaking. But from there, to be able to communicate and then to use what we know and what we bring to the table, as well as the openness to improvise, to listen, to learn, to grow, to try new things. That really seems to be the name of the game. If you're really trying to grow and really succeed individually or collectively.
Hmm. Yep. That openness to grow,
Yeah.
which means that openness to make mistakes and openness to try things that don't work.
Right.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's good. It is important to talk about because sometimes your goal is not a product. Sometimes it's a process. You spoke about like being confidently present,
Right.
right, and speaking your truth and being in that environment,
Right.
right? Like so. I mean, I wasn't there, but I'm sure that there was also beautiful music that was produced. But there's also a goal that's about
Hmm.
being present,
Right.
right? And if it's musicians together, there might be a goal of building relationship or listening to one another or just having fun, and it doesn't like
Right.
maybe nobody else is listening, maybe it's
Yeah.
just for you. And so it doesn't the goal doesn't have to be about product.
Right. Right. I totally agree with you on that. Um, as a musician, I've had the opportunity to play different styles of popular music. Everything from hip hop to R&B to classical to pop, blues, funk, gospel. Um, Now, one of the later additions to my life as far as learning was jazz. You know,
Mm.
and so I found a home in jazz, and interestingly, in finding a home in jazz, it's connected me right back with everything else. It's almost like jazz for me is everything. Jazz for me is life, right?
Mm-hmm.
But the thing that drew me to jazz, at least as an art form, the most was that it to me was it was so in line with life as I was understanding it at that point, and just to me like my life journey, right? It aligned with that so much that I basically took the same principles from life and applied them, right to music. It was about really sharing your truth. It was about sharing the space, supporting others, being able to lead, follow, being able to play harmoniously in real time, right? Via all these things that we're talking about. Um, so it's really interesting. But and that's how I find myself really where you meet me, in a place of improvisational music where I can't even put a name on it really at this point. It's just
Mm-hmm.
you know it's life music, if you will. Uh, what for you is your favorite form of improvisational music?
Hmm. Hmm. To play or to hear?
Just either. Just
Oh. Um.
because all of them at some point you realize there's that well, and we'll go back to this later. There's some art forms where it doesn't really seem like there's room for it at all, but I think it just shows up in another way. But then there are others where it's obvious. So in the out of the different genres, for you, what one speaks to you where you have that foundational genre and then you have the improvisational nature on
Yeah.
top?
I think to play, I'm not a great drummer, but I think drum circles are kind of my favorite way to jump in. I feel like there's just a lot of permission for range
Yeah,
in drum circles in my experience,
right.
right? And there's a mentoring that happens in my experience.
Right.
Um, so that might be my favorite to play, but like if I'm trying to do some chords and my kid is trying to do some chords and we sound terrible, but we're having fun, I like that too.
Yeah.
But to hear, I think improvisational jazz is the thing that really impresses me because, like, if you write out the theory of what's happening,
Right. Right.
it's so sophisticated.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah,
Oh gosh. So, and I'm sorry I'm bubbling over with excitement,
yeah.
but it's because, and it was where I was going to go right after you finished. When I'm playing with another musician or other group of, a couple musicians, we're making the same decisions that we would make in life if we were harmonious brothers and sisters.
Mm-hmm.
There are times when someone else hears that I'm struggling and they might do something musically to help me out, to give me a lift, right?
Yep, yeah.
There's times when I do the same for another. There's times when we're all open. There's no, maybe there is a leader at the time, but at the same time it's understood non-verbally that it's open for suggestion. And if someone makes a suggestion and everybody will consider it, or not, and that's how you start knowing what kind of conversation you're having. But if you consider it, then if that idea is moved to the front and everybody decides that, oh, musically with these different rhythms and phrases and dynamics and crescendos, and the more that I've understood how that is life, and the more I keep, you know, going deeper and deeper in thought, the music goes deeper for me, the experience goes deeper. I learn more about life. I learn more about the music, you know, and it is an amazing, amazing process. But it truly is that kind of dance, and it really just shows you with trusting the process and having like common intentions as far as the goals, how much
Mm-hmm.
can be accomplished and how amazing of
Yeah,
impression and experience, right?
right. Yes, yes. I mean, exactly. The common goals and the commitment to support one another,
Yeah,
right? The commitment to be together in that you're not trying to make your bandmates look bad by showing them up. You're trying to be in this shared creation space
right.
because supporting one another is how you create something that's more complex and beautiful.
Yeah, I totally agree with you. One of the things I've realized is that the more sophisticated the music is as far as improvisation, the more courage it takes because it's actually more about bearing your soul and being completely vulnerable.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And sometimes it's seen in the opposite way. It's seen in an exact opposite way, but it's really because this is the thing I say, many people think that say, and I talk about this a lot. If you have rules, if you give someone a checklist of rules, it is easier for you to follow those rules than it is for you to think on your own and make decisions with your autonomy. It's much
Mm-hmm.
easier, And so when I think about that parallel with life and I think about this kind of journey, oh, it's way more trusting of the process.
Mm-hmm.
You know,
Mm-hmm.
it's way more about trusting the process. You may have fear, but the courage is what you are grabbing onto and trusting that your intentions, even just what you set out, it's gonna be it's gonna be all right. And the last thing I'll say about that is, as a musician, one of the things I pride myself on is I love this about my style, if you will. I feel like I'm a cat that lands on his feet. I'm more so a really good recoverer than I am an executor.
Mm. Mm.
But actually, I put something on Facebook the other day where I was saying that sometimes making up for something actually offers even a deeper experience than executing it right the first time, you know?
Exactly. You learn something, you learn a variation.
Yes, yes.
Yes, you get a chance to rebuild and oh yeah, absolutely.
Someone asked me one time, we were talking about going down a highway, and if you make a turn that wasn't going in a direction, was it a wrong turn or not? And I'm like, no. First of all, it depends. It's like everything else. It depends on the person telling the story, right? But in my mind, though, it's not because maybe
Mhm.
I learned some new way that I wouldn't have, known about before and that kind of thing. So, needless to say, this won't be our last conversation. But yeah, this is a fun topic, to talk about and just thoughts, period, in life. Um, so yeah, before I let you go, I guess, I just wanted to ask, like, is there anything else on your heart, or on your mind, um,
Oh, I
or-
mean, there's so many places we can go from here,
right?
right? Like I'm thinking about the spiritual journey,
Mm-hmm.
and so maybe that we'll take that up next time. That
Yeah.
that there's cognates to some at some point people need like, okay, what are the rules?
Mm-hmm.
And at some point it's about their relationship with their path.
Right.
So all over again.
All that and more on the next episode.
All right, cool.
So yeah, but yeah, it's this has been really really good. Again, I really enjoyed my time with you all. A couple Sundays ago, I look forward, to being able to be a guest again. And
Yeah.
and I guess just one last thing, where where is your information? So you have Washington Ethical Society, and the services are what, every Sunday at
Sunday at 10:30 on Zoom.
10:30 on Zoom.
So yes, if you go to the website, you'll see the link. It's like tiny.cc/West platform. At
Okay.
10:30 on Sunday will take you to the Zoom.
And there's also a Facebook page where you can go, and that's where you'll be watching it, right, on Facebook, or
Some people watch it on the Zoom. Some people watch it if you once people are members, they can get into the Facebook group, and I think they watch it
got
in there.
got it. Oh,
So it's both places because some people just live on Facebook, so they stay there.
right,
But
right,
you can go to the Zoom, and so there's that's Sunday mornings, and then there's even online meetings and classes throughout the week on Zoom.
right. Got it. And then, lastly, do you have a social media handle where people are able to find you?
Um, I there's like 5 things on it, but I have a YouTube that's Revlyn Cox, Revlyncox,
Got it. Perfect.
and same on Twitter.
Okay. Sounds good. Well, this has been great. I hope that it was great for you, like it was for me.
It was so good to talk to you.
And yeah, and I definitely look forward to chatting with you again, and yeah, chopping it up, as I say, on some more of this, because we're just at the tip of the iceberg.
Absolutely. All right. Well, I hope to talk to you again soon.
Sounds good. Take care and have a great
Take
evening.
care. Bye.
Bye bye.